Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing very well today. This is Steven. I decided to try to go back and play through my league I played last night. It was a really fun league, and I wanted just to share some things that happened in it. There are a few games that are a little more interesting than others, so I'll probably be prioritizing some time with some of the matches, and others I'll probably just be moving through more quickly. Before we dive in, though, I'm going to show the list that we have so far. Everything about this list is fairly stock. There are two minor changes, though, that I've made to my list. A lot of people are playing the fourth Bolt and the fourth Bloodbraid Elf, and I've moved those to be two Seasoned Pyromancers. This is mostly because in the leagues that I've been playing, it's the grind is the grinding that Seasoned Pyromancer provides has been really, really essential. I've really needed to be able to draw more cards and be able to ditch excess cards that I don't need. And Season Pyromancer specifically, and one of the matches that you're going to see was super clutch. Yeah, but other than that, though, the two Assassin's Trophy, three Ren and six, four Lilianas, four Tarmogoyf, two Croxa, two Scavenging Ooze, two Fatal Push, 3-3 split of Inquisition and Thoughtseize. All this is pretty standard. Not too much to talk about. I've opted to go with the three Pillages over the Fulminator Mages to play around Veil of Summer. I do miss Fulminator Mage for some of the matchups, but I think for the most part, Pillage is going to fill the job just fine. We have Boil and Choke to help fight against any blue-based decks. Two Collective Brutality as somewhat of a removal spell. The -2/-2 mode is fine in certain matchups, like against humans or other tribal strategies, but mostly this is for mono red and burn. The life gain is really important, and the -2 is important to kill their creatures, and the duress mode is also very important. Two Plague Engineer and one Anger of the Gods. There are a lot of other cards you could put in these slots, in my opinion, and I've opted to go with an Anger and two Plague Engineers just because of how potent and powerful these cards are when you need them. Plague Engineer is not been as good recently just because there's not a lot of humans or tribal or X1 creature strategies out there. However, when you need him, it's backbreaking. It's almost, in my opinion, in those matchups is the closest way for us to get free wins. Two Ashioks to complement our Pillages to help against big mana strategies. I think Ashiok is just totally essential in the metagame right now. Especially Ashiok is very nice to mill yourself to help fuel your Croxas and grow your Tarmogoyfs. Two Klothys. In the sideboard, Klothys has been a card that's really impressed me, and not a card that I respected much when it first came out. But I've really come around on this card. I just can't imagine playing a league without at least one copy in the 75. It is some incidental life gain, which is always important for our deck. It helps in a long grindy matchup, the mirror match. If you land this thing, it's going to win the game. This is the only threat that you really need, honestly, if you are containing their board in their hand. So this thing will just eventually win the game. So I've really been happy with the Klothys. So I'm excited to keep playing that. And then Huntmaster. Again, Huntmaster is kind of having his day in the sun again. All aspects of this card is just so good when you need it. The first half being life gain and another body makes it good for both matchups where your life total's at risk, and also when you just need a good 2-for-1, making two bodies on the battlefield. But then if this thing ever flips and then you flip it back, it's just the value is insane. So if you get to nab one of their creatures, when it flips, deals 2 damage to one of their creatures, that's really great. And then a 4/4 Trampler also sometimes gets the job done. So, all right, that's the list. Let's jump into some of the games. We're going to take a look at our first game. Our first game was against Mono Red Prowess. And the first game that I played of this league, I don't really remember there being too many difficult decisions there. We opened up on our first opening hand was not keepable. And let me try that one more time because I want to watch actually what it looked like. Okay, so we have this hand right here. And we got 3 lands, a Lightning Bolt, Liliana, Bloodbraid Elf, Inquisition, Kozilek. And I think it's just pretty easy bottoming the Bloodbraid Elf. Maybe we want to bottom a land and try to get lucky, but we just don't really want to play that kind of game. Just want to keep the lands and the spells that we can cast with it. Pretty great hand on the play. So let's take a look. We start off, grab Swamp, and we Inquisition. And we see it's Mono Red Prowess. And they have a pretty good hand. They have a Monastery Swift Spear, 2 of them, Fire Islet, 2 Mountains, Manamorphose, and a Kiln Fiend. So as I'm looking at this hand, my first thought is that I want to try to have them play out in a way that is most favorable for me. So I'm going to take one of the Swift Spears because I'm imagining them to go Mountain Swift Spear on turn 1. Then we have the Stomping Ground to Lightning Bolt it. And then I'm hoping that for turn 2, they go their other Mountain and then their Kiln Fiend, and then we can got that covered with the Liliana down tick for them to sack. So let's see how that plays out. They start off Mountain into Swift Spear. So they hit us to 18. We draw a Wrenn and 6 here. I fetch basic Swamp on the first turn, and that's a kind of a decision to be made in the blind. I just thought it was overall the most safe decision to make. We got like somewhat punished by drawing the Wrenn and 6, but you know the Wrenn and 6 is not very good in this matchup anyway. And we on that first turn in the blind, we had a lot of other things to do with our mana, so we could have fetch shocked, but ended up just going with just the fetch here. So anyway, they play their Swift Spear, we bolt it, and I'm anticipating for them to go play their second Mountain Kiln Fiend. We'll see what happens. Unfortunately here, what they do though is they have drawn another Swift Spear, and after they hit us, they cast a Light Up the Stage that they drew. So these are the 2 cards that they drew, the Light Up the Stage, the Monastery Swift Spear. Right now we're just in a really bad spot. There's just really no other way around it. They hit another threat and a Lava Dart off of their Light Up the Stage. So at this point, I mean, that's just kind of the beats right there. That happens. And I'm not, we're just in a really bad spot. So we're going to draw another Wrenn and 6, which, you know, really, really bad. Here I do have to kind of fetch Shock because I do want to try to get these Wrenn and 6s online. So we play our Lily and Edict and sacrifice their Swift Spear. We go to them. They're most likely just playing out the cards they have in exile from their Light Up the Stage. Yeah, they just dart the Lily. They have a Soul Scar Mage. Play out an Islet. We're really behind here. And the Swamp's not really going to do it. Play Wrenn and 6, get the land. So what I'm thinking here is that since there was nothing in that last turn that could have allowed me to go double Wrenn and 6, because we just had Stomping Ground, Overgrown Tomb, Swamp, and then we drew the other Swamp. So it's not like we could have gone down tick on Soul Scar Mage, play the other Wrenn and 6, down tick on Soul Scar Mage. That just wouldn't have with our lands. Also can't happen because they have a Lava Dart in the graveyard, and they can just flash that back and grow the Soul Scar Mage out of range of that. Something just to keep in mind, just something we weren't able to do here. Let's see what they do. Cast their Manamorphose. Make 2 red. Sack to draw. Play out their Kiln Fiend. And their Soul Scar Mage. They're just going at us. They don't really care about this Wrenn and 6. Alright, we fetch. Again, you know, we do have that Wrenn and 6 line, but they didn't use their Lava Dart, so nothing really to be done there. Draw Scavenging Goose, which is pretty good. Kind of punished me there for not fetching on a green source here. I should have gotten the second Overgrown Tomb instead of the Blood Crypt. Doesn't matter too much here, though. We just play that Scavenging Goose, and we want to grow it outside of Lightning Bolt range to make it a 4/4. All right, they got another Manamorphose. Things are looking pretty grim. And right here, I think that all I'm just having in mind is I just really want to trade. I want to trade with this Kiln Fiend. In fact, we are in a really bad spot, and I don't think it matters too much. However, from my opponent's perspective, these Lava Darts, I think, may have gone at the Scavenging Ooze. It would have cost both their mountains, so that's a big price to pay. However, I think that that's something they might be okay with if they get to do 2 things. One, they get to hit for a bunch of damage with the Soul Scar Mage, and they make it so my Scavenging Ooze can't even trade for the Kiln Fiend, and it's just a chump. Darting the Scavenging Ooze and then flashing back both of them targeting the Scavenging Ooze would make the Scavenging Ooze a 1/1 from Soul Scar Mage's ability. So that's something that I think my opponent may have done, but you know, it doesn't matter too much here. but they do let me get to do the trade here, so that's pretty great. And they're just going to Lava Dart upstairs. We're really close to dead here. Cool. So they have 2 threats. We're at 2 life, and we don't draw anything relevant. Again, we could have gone Ren and 6 down tick, Ren and 6 down tick, but, you know, don't think we were really winning from there. All right, on to game 2. And, whoops, let's get that back online. All right, there we go. We're looking at this opening hand, and this opening hand looks very, very good. We have a lot of the different things that we need in this matchup. We have a really powerful removal spell in Collective Brutality. If we draw anything extra, we can maybe pitch this Liliana, something else, to kill a creature and rest their hand or drain. And then we also have a Tarmogoyf, which is one of your best threats in this matchup. So we go ahead and keep our opponent mulligans to 5, so things are going a lot better for us here. We're just going to Bloodstain Mire and pass. There's to be something to be thought about here if we want to try to fetch to play around Blood Moon. So that's something definitely to be thinking about if we want to just fetch here Basic Swamp. There are 2 things about that, though, that I don't like. One is that it makes it so we can't cast for Tarmogoyf, and 2, that my opponent just went Sunbait Canyon into Monastery Swiftspear. Typically, if your opponent leads on the Pain land, there's a good chance that they're hurting on lands. Now, there's a chance, outside chance, they just have a bunch of Sandbait Canyons in hand, but there's also a chance that they mulligan to 5 and kept a 1-lander, and there's just this one Sunbait Canyon in hand. So right now, I'm not that afraid of Blood Moon. And because of that, after they swing in with their Monastery Swiftspear, I'm going to go ahead and just get a tapped Overgrown Tomb. Cool, we draw another land. Fortunately, it's not another black source for Liliana, but, you know, we'll still take the lands. It's a green source for Skoos, so that's nice. And we're going to go ahead and Collective Brutality. We pitch the excess Liliana, get to kill the Monastery Swiftspear, and then they had Crash Through Manamorphose. Now, in this spot, Crash Through Swiftspear, Manamorphose, but of course, Swiftspear we can't take with the Collective Brutality. There is a lot of consideration here to take a Crash Through. I think if it was only one Crash Through in hand, I would have taken it, because the Crash Through helps them to draw out of their situation of this one land. But since they have 2, it doesn't feel that productive to take the Crash Through, and I think we're just going to take the more powerful card in Manamorphose. So we throw it on over to them. They lead on Swiftspear. And they crack in for 1. Thankfully, they've missed their land, so our good luck continues, because we draw the Black Leaf Cliffs. You know, when you run hot, you run hot. So we're going to down tick, kill the Swiftspear, and they are in a lot of trouble here. Cool, so we draw another land, so we're just going to slam both our threats. There's an argument to be made for just playing the Skoos and eating, but that just seems a little bit passive here. We want to take advantage of the fact that they're on 1 land, so we want to apply as much pressure to the board as we can. And they just scoop there. All right, let's take a look at game 3. That's so funny that it does that. Okay, let's take a look. Let's see if I don't skip through this opening here. All right, good deal. So this hand is a tricky one. There are things to really like about this hand. The things to really like about this hand are the double Inquisition and a Fatal Push. Being able to Fatal Push one of their initial Prowess creatures is a huge, huge game. And on top of that, being able to Inquisition out key spells is really, really what's going to break up their initial progression. The things about this hand that really aren't very good are the Seasoned Pyromancer, the Bloodbraid Elf, and the Raging Ravine. Because, first of all, the Raging Ravine, not only is it a tap land, and that really hurts when you're up against an aggressive matchup, but also the Raging Ravine makes it a lot harder to play around Blood Moons that they may be bringing in. The Seasoned Pyromancer is a double red card, which means that we would have to fetch Shock with Verdant Catacombs, first of all, which is bad. We don't want to fetch Shock in an aggressive matchup. And also, fetch Shocking here for the red and a black would mean we are a lot more vulnerable to Blood Moon. So this is certainly a hand to consider either way, but you know, I think we do have to keep it just on the power of these 3 cards right here. All right, they mulligan to 6, and they go ahead and go Mountain into Soulscar Mage. We draw the Liliana. It's not the best draw, but you know. And I decide to go ahead and lead on basic Swamp. First of all, to save myself some life, and then to also help play around Blood Moon. Also, I'm going to lead on this because I really, really want to take back some of the momentum of being on the draw. Maybe you want to play this Raging Ravine tapped, but there's two problems with that. One, with Raging Ravine tapped, we're doing nothing to affect the board on turn 1. And second of all, if we go Ravine tapped and then take our draw step and go Swamp, we're only casting one of these cards. Now what we get to do is we get to go turn 1 Inquisition, turn 2 tap Raging Ravine, but still cast one of these two powerful cards. We see their hand, and their hand is pretty bad. It is a Lava Spike, a Lightning Bolt, Bedlam Reveler, and a Monastery Swiftspear. So we just take the threat because we only have the one Fatal Push in hand. Let's see what they do. Oh, they draw the other one. Draw the other one. Cool. And we hit a Collective Brutality, which is really nice. Collective Brutality lets us do a lot of things here. One, it guarantees that we have an answer for another of their threats. And it also lets us pitch some of this excess card. We get to use these cards that we can't cast, and basically we get to turn them into spells by adding them to the Collective Brutality. So we decided to pass here. We can save this Inquisition here. We know about a Lightning Bolt and a Lava Spike. In fact, that's just their hand. Lightning Bolt, Lava Spike, Bedlam Reveler. And Inquisitioning one of these out of their hand is very low impact in my opinion. Maybe if they had to light up the stage, we want to Inquisition, but we know what their hand is. They're drawing one unknown. I'd rather hold up this Fatal Push here to kill the Soulscar Mage. All right, they go ahead and spike us. And they're missing their land, so they just swing in. We get to Fatal Push. All right, we draw an Anger of the Gods that we can't cast, but again, this Collective Brutality is going to be really nice. And we're just going to pick this Inquisition because we're not going to use it yet. Maybe we pitch this Bloodbraid Elf to drain. That may have been something that I should have done. You know, in hindsight here, looking back at this, I think we had a pretty free pitch here in Bloodbraid Elf. But instead what we do is we -2, -2, and then duress their hand. They just have the Lightning Bolt, and their hand is atrocious. They just have 2 Bedlam Revelers they can't cast. Even if they just hit running lands for a while, they're not going to be able to cast those cards. They pass. We hit a Scooze, which is a great draw. Even though it's not a land, it's a really good draw. They crash through, miss their land again. Here's really similar to last game. It kind of plays itself out. All right, hit the cliffs. So now we can cast the Liliana. Pitch the Anger of the Gods because they have no creatures on board. Go ahead and get in with our creatures. And they're in really rough shape here. Trying to bring Rage is way too late. It's not doing anything here. All right, we get to pitch our 2 cards, make 2 1/1s, present more of a board presence. I could have maybe cast this Tarmogoyf, but casting the Tarmogoyf there doesn't change the clock. And I just want to draw into more interactions, have more things on the board in case they somehow cobble together a defense to this, but you know, there's not much they can do. And oops, we're still playing? Nope, that's it. I concede. All right, and so there we go. We lost the first game, but game 2 and 3 we got very lucky. They got stuck on one land. Let's go ahead and take a look at the second game of this league. Second match of this league. All right. We win the die roll, which is always very nice. And we look at a hand. It's funny, whenever I click it, it just goes through it so quickly. I believe, I don't want to restart it. I believe is a hand really similar to this one. This hand just doesn't do anything. I mean, just look, what are we going to do? Raging Ravine tapped, Kroxa. I really dislike keeping a hand that just has the Kroxa in it because, it really just doesn't do much. Scavenging Ooze on his own, it's just a 2/2 Grizzly Bear. I really, really dislike this kind of a hand. I think we can do a lot better than this. It does feel really bad in the blind to mulligan to 5, but, we have some good hands that we can dig back up from. A hand like this hand is extremely good going down to 5 cards, specifically because of these 3 cards right here. Anything where there's a land, a fetch land, that has the ability to cast a Ren and 6 is very, very good because this can completely unmulligan us going down to 5. And especially if we get very lucky and just draw spells off the top, then ticking up to get the lands with Ren and 6 is just straight up a 2-mana Planeswalker that ticks up to draw a card. This is really, really just shows the power of Ren and 6 right here as a hand like this. I believe I ditched the Scavenging Ooze and the Kolaghan's command here, but let's see what we do. Yep. We just want to keep our hand really basic, right? We just want to keep disruption, our value engine, and our threat. We don't need to get more fancy than that. We're going to lead off on our turn 1 Inquisition because it's very powerful. There we go. When we Inquisition them, we see it's the mirror match. And we have Inquisition, Kolaghan's Command, Tarmogoyf, Raging Ravine, Scavenging Ooze, and Wooded Foothills. So when we Inquisition them, there just are some just objectively very powerful cards in their hand that we should take with this Inquisition. For instance, the Kolaghan's Command. This is a very, very powerful card in this matchup. The Jund Mirror, the 2-for-1 in Kolaghan's Command is very real. The Tarmogoyf is a threat. The Scavenging Ooze really can run away with the game in the mirror. So all of these are really big arguments. I normally never take their opposing hand disruption. It's only because our hand is so reliant on this Renin 6 resolving that I take the other Inquisition. So a little bit of an unfortunate Inquisition for us, but we just kind of have to do what we got to do. They go ahead and just play tapped Raging Ravine, and they pass back to us. So yeah, we just slam the Renin 6, tick up, get our value. And they play that Wooded Foothills. Play their Tarmogoyf. And look what happens here. We drew Kolaghan's Command, Lightning Bolt for our draws. So we drew 2 spells, and we're about to get this land back. Now it's like we never mulliganed. Right here, I think it's really important just to take care of this threat. We have to be really careful here. If we just Lightning Bolt this Tarmogoyf, the Tarmogoyf will survive. The Lightning Bolt will assign 3 damage to the Tarmogoyf. Then the game will check state bait actions, and it'll see that there's an instant sorcery and land in the graveyard, and Tarmogoyf will be a 3/4. So it'll just be a 3/4 Tarmogoyf with 3 damage assigned. So we gotta be really careful here. We are going to Lightning Bolt this, but we have to make sure we also down tick with our Renin 6 to kill it as well. So we get to do that, and then we get to present our own threat of Tarmogoyf. Very powerful turn. All right, we get to pass to them. That was the line I decided to take there. In hindsight, though, there was definitely more to be considered. If I just played my own Tarmogoyf and passed, I could have ticked up on the Renin 6 to defend my own Kolaghan's Command from theirs. So that's definitely something that I could have considered there. But they have the Inquisition anyway, so it didn't really matter. And they are stuck on lands. So we're just going to play our Raging Ravine, get a land back with Ren, attack in. Now I'm feeling in a very comfortable spot. They're right now they're mana screwed, and we have the ability to attack with both Tarmogoyf and the Raging Ravine now. All right, they play their Scavenging Ooze. Ooh, we have a very, very good draw here. Oh, settle down now. Oh, Moto. Oh, Moto. I didn't even click to hit play. All right, y'all. I'll see if we can rewind on all that. So. Oh, God. All right. We'll do the TLDR on what just went down there. It was unfortunate because there were a lot of really, really close decisions that were made there that I really wanted to take some time to talk about. Anyway, they hit their third lands on they had already hit their third land and played their Scavenging Ooze. I made what was probably a questionable decision here to Assassin's Trophy their Scavenging Ooze. The reason I did that is because in a lot of ways I think Scavenging Ooze really runs away with the game in the mirror match. It will just outclass a Tarmogoyf in a lot of different ways. First of all, the Scavenging Ooze can just shrink the Goyf. Also, the Scavenging Ooze itself, by eating other creatures, just can get bigger than it. I think it's just a real nightmare. Also, we have a lot of really important cards in our deck, like Seasoned Pyromancer, Kroxa, lands for the Renin 6. There's just, in a lot of ways, the Scavenging Ooze is really, really disruptive of the key value engines of our deck. So that's why I went ahead and did that. However, before that, we had a very good draw on the Seasoned Pyromancer, and I think this really highlights how powerful this card is. Not only does it have a really important effect here, but you'll see in a few turns here, it also has a very important effect. Our opponent decided to Kolaghan's command us, making us discard and returning their own Tarmogoyf. I think that was just straight up a mistake because they saw that we had gotten back a land with Wrenn and 6 previously. They drew a Fatal Push, and they Fatal Pushed their Tarmogoyf. I think that brings us back up to speed with where we're at now. So we're going to pass it back to them, and we have the Seasoned Pyromancer, and we have 2 different Raging Ravines, one that we can activate. And they go ahead and draw for turn. They play a land, and they get a Liliana. And they tick up. And again, this was strange to me. I guess they don't want to tick down because then we automatically get to flashback to Seasoned Pyromancer. So I think that's what their thinking was there. So that's probably reasonable. And they don't attack because we can double block with the Ravine and the Seasoned Pyromancer to trade for their Tarmogoyf, which is a very favorable trade for us because they only get to kill the 1 Raging Ravine or kill the Seasoned Pyromancer. The Ravine will just be brought back with Wrenn and 6, and the Pyromancer gets value from the graveyard, so they can't really attack there. We take our draw step. We just draw a land. So we're going to go ahead and fire up the Ravine here. The reason we're going to fire up the Ravine here is because we're going to attack Liliana. Either one of 2 things are happening. They're going to block. It's going to kill a Ravine, but then we get to pick it off with the Wrenn and 6. And I will definitely trade this Ravine that we can buy back with the Wrenn and 6 for the Tarmogoyf. Or they don't block, and then Liliana dies here. So they go ahead and do that trade, which again I think is very unfavorable for them. We just get a down tick on the Wrenn and 6, and we get to pass. All right, they hit a Bloodbraid Elf, which is pretty scary. What do they hit? They hit the other Liliana, another Liliana, which this was really lucky here. As you guys could see before, we ended up winning this game, and I think it's really because of this right here. There are so many hits with this Bloodbraid Elf that would have just totally put us completely out of the game. But hitting the redundant Liliana there was quite lucky. And they decided not to cast it because they just want the higher loyalty on Lily. They tick down to make a sacrifice, and they go ahead and attack the Wrenn and 6. All right, we grab an Overgrown Tomb. Just going to fetch on the end step. And here's where we are presented with a pretty interesting decision. Because when we take our draw step, we draw our own Liliana. Okay, so we have a lot of decisions to make here. We can cast this Liliana and tick down. If we do that, we lose the ability to fire up this Raging Ravine. We lose the ability to flashback our Seasoned Pyromancer. Not flashback, to exile it and make 2 1/1 elemental creatures. If we go ahead and do that, Liliana, Edict, they kill the Bloodbraid Elf, then Raging Ravine gets its pick of who it wants to kill, either Wrenn and 6 or the Liliana. That situation seems pretty bad for us because both of these Planeswalkers is how we're going to leverage our ability to win this game. Both of these are going to see a lot of value. I want to put ourselves in the best position possible where I can play this Liliana and be able to protect it, either with the Raging Ravine or with the Seasoned Pyromancer 1/1 elemental tokens. So what we actually end up doing here is we just pick up a land, but we're not going to play it, because if we play it, then we lose this Liliana to their uptick. So we pick up a land to protect it from their Liliana and just pass the turn. We go to them. We're pretty vulnerable here. Any good top deck? Thankfully, they just hit a land. So that's pretty lucky. They go ahead and tick up. We just card the land we just put in our hand. And now we're in a pretty decent spot here. If they decide to try to kill our Wrenn and 6, we can defend it. If they attack both into the Wrenn and 6, we can defend it. Or we can maybe decide if we want to let our Wrenn and 6 go, we can trade with the Bloodbraid Elf. We have a lot of options here. What our opponent decides to do instead is just go ahead and attack both of these at us. I think they need to kill this Wrenn and 6. Or at least try to trade with these 1/1 tokens. Because what we can do here is actually just going to 5 really just does not matter at all. And instead we can just flash it back, get both of these elementals, and then And then now we are in an extremely strong position. Because from here, we can go ahead and just play our Liliana, take care of their Bulbaried Elf, attack with both elementals to pit the Liliana to 1, and then ping it off to kill it. And now look where we are. We have 2 threats, we have 2 Planeswalkers to their 1 man land, and we have the Assassin's Trophy as an answer for it. And they go ahead and just fire it up. We wait for them to attack, and then we... and this was really funny. They attack with a Raging Ravine, and we Assassin's Trophy it. They don't search up a land because they drew the mountain for the turn. So our opponent bricked off pretty hard here. All right, we draw the Maelstrom Pulse. And I'm going to just pick up a land. I want to keep this Maelstrom Pulse in my hand. We just fire up the guys, go ahead and swing in. We're not attacking with this Elemental, because if we do attack with this Elemental, we die to very specifically Bloodbraid Elf and a Lightning Bolt. And wouldn't you know, hit the Bloodbraid Elf, but they had the Assassin's Trophy here. Trophy here is not that great. You know, it's you know, they want to trade Assassin's Trophy for 1 Elemental. You know, they're probably going to have to hit one of our Planeswalkers, and they have to hit the Raging Ravine because it's a huge threat. So you know, all options here are pretty bad for them. All right, go ahead and attack in. We're going to block here, so we're not just... oh, I'm sorry, they're attacking the Liliana, so we just block here. Easy block, so then we can just down tick with Lily. And we hit our own Bloodbraid Elf, so we ran pretty hot this game. And cast the Bloodbraid Elf. Doesn't really matter what we hit, because then we just win the game. All right, going into game 2. All right, we're on the draw. We open up on a hand that, you know, is not the strongest, but, you know, our range for keepable hands in the mirror is going to be pretty wide. As the last game showed, just the raw number of cards you have in your hand is one of your most powerful tools in this matchup. So we're going to go ahead and keep a hand like this, just based on the fact that we have 3 different threats and a removal spell. And also being on the draw is really nice. And lands to cast all of our spells. All right, opponent mulligans on the play, which is also a little bit of a death sentence in the mirror here. All right, they go land go. We just play a Raging Ravine tap, pass it back to them. We're just mostly worried about Ren and 6 here because that will unmulligan them. And they do hit the Ren and 6. Unfortunately, they go ahead and pick up a land. And we're going to play out our threat. Feels bad here because what just happened got to happen, where they get to bolt our Tarmogoyf. I don't think we can Assassin's Trophy this Ren and 6. If you Assassin's Trophy this Ren and 6, we give them a turn 3 Bloodbraid Elf, which might just end the game on the spot. I think that we just kind of have to play the Tarmogoyf there. It feels really bad. Really, really does. Like, it just doesn't feel like there's many good options there. But, yeah, it does go ahead and it gets bolted. They play their own Tarmogoyf. Pass. Ren ticks up. Very strangely, they don't pick up the land, the Ren and 6. It must have just been a misclick. I'm not sure what happened there. We are very, very fortunate here. We play Tarmogoyf, and we get to hold up Fatal Push here. And here we go, another just horribly unlucky cascade for our opponent. Oh man, hitting the Maelstrom Pulse. I was really hoping for a second that they wouldn't realize what would happen here, but they do wisely choose not to cast this Pulse, given that there are no good targets here. In case you're not aware, Maelstrom Pulse destroys target non-land permanent and all the permanents with the same name. It doesn't care if it's on different sides of the battlefield. So if this Maelstrom Pulse targets this Tarmogoyf, it's going to hit this Tarmogoyf and that Tarmogoyf. So really, really unlucky there for our opponent. And they just don't really have good attacks here. Yeah, we're just letting that through because we don't want to trade with the Ren. And now we get to kill their Ren and 6 here because now we just get to go end step. Fatal Push their Tarmogoyf. Untap. Bolt. Kill it. Play our own Tarmogoyf. Pass turn. They play a Kroxa. We'll go ahead and pitch this Assassin's Trophy. It's not really doing a whole lot here. They don't have good attacks, and we would rather have the Seasoned Pyromancer to draw us more action. All right, land, Nile Spellbomb. If we just play our land, we just get to draw 2 fresh cards. And we hit some pretty good ones. This Kroxa would be a whole lot better if it wasn't just going to die here to the Nile Spellbomb. We don't want to play this Kroxa, though, because if we play the Kroxa here, they will just take 3 life, but then they will escape their own Kroxa, and we're going to lose the Bloodbraid Elf. So what we're going to do instead is let them escape their Kroxa, discard our own. That will force them to Nile Spellbomb, and then that will tap out all their mana, and we can safely Bloodbraid from there. We're going to go ahead and attack here. They will... Let's see, what would happen if they double blocked here? Yeah, I guess they could have maybe double blocked, but then we get to kill a Bloodbraid. I think we just want to get in here, and they don't have terrific blocks here. All right, so they're going to go ahead and do that. Escape the Kroxa. We discard our own Kroxa. So then they realize that we can cast that next turn. They just kind of have to Nile Spellbomb here. We're going to go ahead and fetch on end step. And then see what Bloodbraid Elf hits. And we hit a Klothys. This was an insane hit off our Bloodbraid Elf. This lets us do a lot of different things. Number one, this lets us have an inevitable engine that's going to kill our opponent. Second, this is just a brick wall. As long as this stays a creature and they don't kill off our Seasoned Pyromancer or Bloodbraid Elf. And let's see, what would they have to do? They would have to kill... Yeah, Pyromancer, Bloodbraid Elf would, turn off Klothys. This is just a brick wall. They can attack with Crooks all they want, which will drain us for 3. But then, first of all, we get to recoup some of that with this Klothys, and also we just get a free block on the Kroxa. So now we are in a very strong position. We're just completely forcing them to top deck here. We don't want to attack, obviously, because it just all dies to Kroxa. They find their own Tarmogoyf. Yeah, look, they just can't attack. All right, we draw another Tarmogoyf. Get to drain them for 2, and we're just in a dominating position here. Scavenging Ooze is a good draw, but notably they only have 1 green source. So the Scavenging Ooze is really, really kind of crippled on what it can be able to do. All right, we draw the Lily, which is a pretty good draw here. All right, so here's a pretty interesting decision that is a little bit tough. I don't think an Edict here does a whole lot. And the reason being is that all that they have to do is just sacrifice off a creature. A couple of things will happen from that. Either that creature will just provide more fuel for their Scavenging Ooze, which could potentially take over the game, or it's more fuel for their Kroxa, which then could be escaped and get value from that escape. So I actually think it's more important here to tick up. We do get their Wrenn and 6 out of their hand. Now when we tick up, we're in a really powerful position of being able to go Edict, Edict. I have the double Edict rolled up for next turn. Pass it to them. Yeah, I don't really know why they're attacking here. I mean, they just get to deal 3 damage. We're at 15, though. That doesn't seem relevant. This seems a really risky attack. We get the free block with Klothys. They didn't cast a removal spell before combat. And, yeah, we just get to block with Klothys. They put us to 12. You know, we can target this to gain the life. I mean, they can negate that with their own Scavenging Ooze, but this just leaves them very vulnerable. Like, you know, some kind of... Now that we can top deck a removal spell and Edict with the Lily, yeah, this seems a little bit questionable here. So we just go ahead and just assign the block with Klothys, and then take our turn. We draw another Liliana, which is a pretty good draw. All right, they protect and eat. And we get to Edict there. Smartly, wisely, they decide to respond with the lightning bolt on the Tarmogoyf, so that the Tarmogoyf will die to the lightning bolt. And there's only land. If they did it afterwards, then the Tarmogoyf would be a 3/4 and not die. We think about maybe playing this other Liliana and edicting again, but I think that's a little risky for the reasons we laid out last turn. Potentially allowing them just to escape the Croaks again, and then potentially giving them a lot more food for their Skoos. So instead, we recognize that they have a 3/4, 3/4, and a 2/2. And so therefore, this Raging Ravine can actually just attack pretty freely into here. Same with the Clothis. So we get to trade off more material here. We've still got quite a brick wall here of creatures, and they just top deck a Blackleaf Cliffs. They can't attack with the Croxa because they'll die on the Crackback. So that's why we were pretty comfortable being able to leave this Lily in hand. And now, as you can see, we just pretty much have it here. We have it in a ton of different ways. Very, very small punt here. I should have targeted the Lightning Bolt with the Clothis so that when they go to eat the Lightning Bolt with their Scavenging Ooze and negate this effect, they don't gain the life. But, you know, it really doesn't matter here because we just get to go Edict and Edict, and they're super dead. All right, let's go on to game 3. Match 3. So we open up on match 3, and we are up against one of my favorite streamers, Jacob Kaminsky, or the Pen Sword. And we know that he is on Blue Moon. And I just had to shoot him a little message there. We open up on a very, very good hand against Blue Moon. This hand lets us do a lot of things. Has a Renin 6 with a Verdant Catacombs. And Renin 6 and Verdant Catacombs, and especially since we already have the Snow-Covered Swamp, lets us play around Blood Moon very easily here. We can easily go turn 2, grab a basic forest, get it back with Renin 6, and then look, we already got basic forest, basic swamp. We also really value Tarmogoyf in this matchup because they have very few ways of answering a Tarmogoyf. They mostly rely on lightning bolts. So some kind of combination of like Bolt Snap Bolt has to kill the Tarmogoyf, or they also play Magmatic Sinkhole, but they usually are only playing about 1, maybe 2 of those. So Tarmogoyf is a very good threat. And also Liliana is very good in this matchup. So overall, this hand's fantastic. If this other Renin 6 was a Thoughtseize, this hand would be perfect. But, you know, can't always have perfection each time. We also win the die roll, which is nice. So we just get to go Verdant Catacombs pass. They play the Flooded Strand. We're going to go ahead and just fetch on the end step to thin out just a little bit, grab a forest. We get to go Blackleaf Cliffs and a Renin 6. They made us... you made me sweat a little bit here for their potential spell snare. But instead, it's an opt into Force of Negation. You know, we're very, very happy to take that. Jacob wisely ditches his Thing in the Ice because he knows that Thing in the Ice is not very good in this matchup. Thing in the Ice just dies just about everything that we have. Liliana's, Fatal Pushes, things like that. So definitely he's going to force a negation this Renin 6 because he realizes our ability. This will help us play around Blood Moon. But, you know, unfortunate for him, we just have the second Renin 6 in hand. So we pass it to his way. Steam Vent's tapped. So if you had shocked this in, we would have been a lot more afraid. Afraid for remand, mana leak, things like that. But since he has it tapped, we're just going to go ahead and fearlessly slam this Renin 6 here. It's important to note that we're going to play the Renin 6 first to put it in his mind that we don't have any more lands in hand. Maybe that if we just lead on Renin 6 here, he might think, oh, they're really relying on getting this other Verdant Catacombs in order to make their hand functional. This might tempt him into casting another Force of Negation. But no, let's go ahead and just assume this resolves. So in an effort to conceal information, we're just going to grab it and pass. You know, maybe you want to play the Blackleaf Cliffs because it comes in untapped, but First of all, we want to try to play around Blood Moon because we want to grab another basic swamp so that we have swamp, swamp, forest, and we can cast every card in our deck. And also, we just have so many lands in hand, it doesn't really matter. We're going to pitch this to the Liliana, something like that. All right, we take our draw step. Another Tarmogoyf is pretty darn good. But we're going to lead on Liliana. Archmage's Charm is going to counter it. We're going to just play out our other land. Pass the turn. I think for the most part, since we have the double threat in hand, we're pretty happy with all these trades. But that thing right there is pretty scary. So we need to deal with this as soon as possible because this is the card that will beat us more than anything else that they've shown us so far. Crack Catacombs. We don't need to play around Blood Moon anymore because we have the other swamp in hand. All right, another Ren 6, not really doing much, so we're just going to go double Goyf. Going to Mystic Sanctuary, get that Force Negation. This is one thing that if I were to talk to Jacob again about this match, I'm just really not sure why he put Force Negation back on top. I would think that Archmage's Charm is just much better here because it seems to be able to do what he wants as a counter spell, but also just Archmage's Charm just seems so much better because he just wants to draw cards in this attrition matchup. I'm not sure about that one. All right, unfortunately, we just draw another land. We're going to go ahead and just move to combat. Threaten ultimate with our Ren and 6 here. So he's going to tap draw. Pass it on over to him. So on our upkeep, they're going to go ahead and Snapcaster Cryptic Command so that we don't just get to freely ultimate this Ren and 6 here. Yep, tap bounce. Unfortunately, it's pretty lucky, very, very lucky draw on our part that we now get to do both. So we're going to go ahead and be able to cast our Ren and 6, kill the Snapcaster, make way for the Bloodbraid Elf to kill the Jace. Yep, so we get to resolve both. And Bloodbraid Elf. We get to see Force of Negation, Blood Moon, Remand, Magmatic Sinkhole, and Archmage's Charm. We're just going to take the most powerful card in their hand in Archmage's Charm. The Sinkhole can take care of, it will be able to because he'll delve away enough cards to shrink the Goyf and kill it. But we don't really care about any of these cards. Blood Moon is the dead card in his hand because we're pretty well insulated against it. Remand is a consideration, but Archmage's Charm is just a more powerful card. We get to freely just kind of bash in and get the Jace. Yep, so that's what he's going to do. Magmatic Sinkhole. Again, Sinkhole gets to delve away cards to shrink the Goyf and then be able to finish off with the 5 damage. All right, just drew another land, so nothing else to do besides just crash in for 7. Then ping with the Ren and 6. We just want to get him dead as quick as can. Finds another Jace. Plays the thing in the ice. So we get to draw Liliana, which is a very, very strong draw. Play it. Get the Force of Negation out of their hand. And pitch the Remand. So we just have one unknown in their hand. And then we get to freely kill this Jace. If they want to block with Thing in the Ice, then it'll just die with the Ren and 6 ping. And we're just going to spew off the other Ren and 6 to put them to 9, since we have the backup one in hand. And with the Blood Moon, Ren and 6 is not really doing a whole lot. Great draw on Fatal Push. Get a counter draw. Get to jam in with our creatures. Then we just have to back up Ren 6 in hand to finish it off. And that'll be the game. Let's go on to game 2. All right. You know, I haven't been showing the sideboard, but I probably should have. For this matchup, we go ahead and we just cut the Scavenging Uses. They just feel really low impact. And we cut the Fatal Push. You may say that you want to keep the Fatal Pushes for the Thing in the Ice, but I know from watching his stream that that Jacob does take out his Thing in the Ices in this matchup. He's much more interested in bringing in really high-value bombs like Ral is a Viceroy and other value-oriented spells. And so the Thing in the Ice he knows just dies too much, so that's why. Let's go ahead and take out the 2 Fatal Pushes and the 2 Scoozes. And from that, we get to bring in a single Collective Brutality. We get to bring in both our Choke and Boil, which are really, really potent cards in the matchup. And then we get to bring in one more card, which I'm spacing out on my sideboard right now. What it would be? Let's go ahead and take a peek. A Hunt Master of the Fells, just because it's a good value piece. All right, let's go back to match. And we have a hand here where we are able to really leverage some very powerful cards in Thoughtseize and Inquisition, but really actually very similar to our back in our first round against Mono Red Prowess with the Raging Ravine and a Black Source. This hand does not play around Bloodwind very well. We're hoping that with how well we played around Bloodwind last match, that may have been taken out as well, but we'll see. Steam Vent, Shock, and Relic of Progenitus. Relic's very good against us. Ooh, we get draw Choke. So now all that I'm interested in this game, all I'm interested in doing is clearing the way, taking out counter spells with Thoughtseize and Inquisition to clear the way to resolve this Choke. Pretty sure when this Choke comes down, it's just going to be lights up. Again, we're going to lead on Thoughtseize turn 1 so that we have a turn 2 play in our other 1-drop and we can just go Raging Ravine tapped. Go ahead and grab a basic Swamp. And we see a choice of Lightning Bolt, Remand, Spell Snare, Chase. So we look at Spell Snare, counters spell with converted mana cost of 2. Currently don't have any of those in hand, so we're not really considering that. Lightning Bolt is kind of a low impact card, not that good against our hand. It's just we're going to take that Remand. All right, they get to go land, go. So we know about these 3 and 1 unknown. We draw the Boil. Funny that we have both. We drew both our hate cards, but Boil's not looking too good here. So we can go ahead and lead on Thoughtseize. We see they just drew the basic Mountain. And so we're just going to take the most powerful card in their hand. Play a land drop and pass. They crack. Jacob goes and cracks his Relic, which is smart because he needs the action. So here, plays the Mountain. Here we can see that actually we might be shifting our game plan here. Our Choke is now not quite as powerful. First of all, Choke into 3 open mana can be kind of scary. There's all kinds of different things they could have here to counter it, or things that they can find ways to play around the Choke, but also they only have 1 island out here. So Choke is not looking too effective here. I think we want to actually prioritize resolving our Lily. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to cast the Lily. We're going to opt in response. And then we're going to both discard. I think about the Maelstrom Pulse, but then I realize actually this Boil is not going to be doing much. This is just an overpriced Stone Rain right now. And look, they have the Petty Theft. So if we had just gone just with the Choke, our whole turn would have been Choke, it gets Petty Thefted. And we wouldn't have done anything. At least with the Lily, we got to snipe a Lightning Bolt out of their hand. Get to pass it on to them. They miss a land drop and pass it to us. Draw on the Kroxa. So I think now is actually a good time. We want to just go ahead and resolve this Choke. If we just play the Lily and tick up, then they just get to play Brazen Borrower and knock it down to 1. Don't think that's particularly powerful here. I think we just want to try to get this choke in here. So they're going to go ahead and snap opt. Maybe a little bit of a... I'm actually not sure about that. I think they're probably looking just for the force negation for the choke, and then also putting a threat on board. So we're at 14 life, which may seem high, but between Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster Mages, and Brazen Borrowers, I think Jacob's plan now is just to try to kill us as fast as we can, because he realizes that with this choke already getting 1 land down, that he's not going to be winning the long game. Goes ahead and shocks it in so that he can cast his Brazen Borrower. All right, we draw Thoughtseize. Definitely could have used a more lands here, but I'm going to just cast the Seasoned Pyromancer, put a bunch of bodies on the battlefield, and also be able to freely ditch our Kroxa. And we hit our lands. So now this is just a race. We got creatures, they do too. Can't attack other Snapcaster because we have the 2 elementals. Great draw on the Tarmogoyf. Alright, we just want to try to just kill this Brazen Borrower. Once we kill this Brazen Borrower, there's just not a lot that he's going to be able to do. Land and pass. Get to Lightning Bolt us. So now we're at 6, so we're actually very real risk of dying here. Just a couple more Lightning Bolts and then we'll be dead. We probably could have attacked with another elemental here. That's probably something we could have done there. Alright, back to us. Alright, now we're seeming pretty free here. This was a punt because I needed to play the land to play around Mana Leak. But it does resolve. So we get to kill the Snapcaster Mage. Alright, jam in with the homies. Probably a little too passive here again to not attack with this elemental here since we do have the Tarmogoyf backup. And run it into the Spell Snare. Oh, that's correct. That's right. I think my thinking here was that I wanted to leave back an elemental to be on blocking duty. I don't know what it would be blocking though. We still knew about their Spell Snare, so we knew that the Tarmogoyf was going to eat the Spell Snare. So if they're going to use their blue to Spell Snare, they just have the 1 red. So yeah, I don't know what I was trying to protect against here. They don't play haste creatures, so yeah, that was probably just incorrect there to leave back the elemental. Play the Tarmogoyf, gets eaten by the Spell Snare. We want to do that so that we can have this counterspell out of the way to make room for our Kroxa. All right, they take a draw step, and then that's it. They realize with the Kroxa, and then with the creatures on the battlefield, the game was pretty over here. We're going to move on to match in round number 4. All right, we open up on just about one of the best hands that you can have with Jund. We have again the combination of the land, fetch land, and be able to cast the Ren 6. We've got a interaction for turn 1, and then we have 2 very good threats in Tarmogoyf, and then this Bloodbraid Elf, which we're going to be most likely going to be able to cast with the extra lands we're getting from the Ren. I was you get to see something pretty funny here that gets to happen. I was just not even thinking. I just went ahead and fetch shocked. You know, sometimes you got to flex on your opponent. You just got to show them who's boss. No, I think actually what happens when I was playing the game, I think that I thought that this was an Inquisition. And so I just auto-slammed keep and then just went fetch shock and then realized, oh, I have a Fatal Push. So we're going to try to hope and pray that they have something we can kill with this Fatal Push. Turn 1. Force is a tease, but they go Force Ancient Stirrings. So they go Force Ancient Stirrings, Amulet of Vigor. And so here's where I'm a little worried. This is where I'm thinking maybe our nice run of luck maybe has run dry. We draw Liliana. So I think the straightforward play here is to play the Ren and 6, get back the land, so guarantee the Liliana. But I think that against Amulet Titan, our matchup is pretty poor. And I would just much rather present the turn 2 threat in Tarmogoyf. You know, we could draw all kinds of different things. Thoughtseizes, maybe, you know, Kolaghan's Command that we'll eventually get to. these Tarmogoyfs tend to get very large in this matchup. So I think our just best shot at winning this matchup is probably just to go full aggro. And, in almost every other spot here, I'm happy to get this Ren and 6 going, buy back the land, get the Ren and 6 Liliana line going. But this is just a deck that doesn't really care about that. They don't really care if you're getting, extra value from your Ren and 6, getting, incremental advantage with the Liliana the Veil. Unfortunately, a deck like Amulet Titan just kind of throws a lot of those, I don't know, want to call them old school rules, but kind of the things that matter in the Jund mirror, for instance, just did not matter here against Amulet Titan. So I think it's just much more important for us to go ahead and just play out our threats, just try to kill them as quickly as possible. All right, so they go Wooded Foothills, and then they get to play their Amulet Vigor. We do get to draw the land, which is pretty good. And given what I had argued before, maybe I should just play this Tarmogoyf. But a couple things here. One, Liliana can definitely pressure their hands, so that can have an impact. Two, the Liliana here, we can discard cards to grow it. So we can discard the Fatal Push, for instance, that will grow the Tarmogoyf. And if they are on a slower hand, which it looks like they are, they don't have a bounce land yet, they just have the Amulet, they have a fetch land, there's a decent chance that we get to ultimate this Liliana. And that is pretty devastating for our Amulet opponent. So yeah, we go ahead and just discard the Fatal Push. Our opponent wisely discards the land, so it doesn't grow the Tarmogoyf anymore. Jam in with the Tarmogoyf, pass turn. They play a Sakura Tribe Scout, which is actually really, really good for us because, first of all, we get to put a creature in the graveyard to grow the Tarmogoyf, and then we have all kinds of different ways to answer it. They play the Chalaria West there. All right, we hit the other land. So there's a lot of different things we can do now. We could Red and 6 down tick on the Sakura Tribe Scout, play another Goyf, and then attack in with it. Alternatively, we can play the land, play the Bloodbraid Elf, and down tick on the Liliana to kill the Sakura. Maybe we want to land Ren and 6 Tarmogoyf tick up, but then that's a little bit sketchy because then we're discarding our Bloodbraid Elf. But it has the upside of attacking their hands. So there's actually a lot of different things that we can do here, and I think that there's probably different ways that we can handle this. I guess what my thinking is that the tick up on the Liliana, that's the line of ticking up on Liliana, killing a Sakura Tribe Scout with the Ren and 6 and playing the other Tarmogoyf. They will choose of 3 cards to discard, and in my experience against Amulet Titan, just the single tick up doesn't really tend to do a whole lot. So I think what's better here is actually just playing the haste threat and Bloodbraid Elf down ticking on the Liliana to kill the Sakura Tribe Scout. So we're going to do that first in the off chance that we hit the other Liliana, and then we get to tick up with that one. Fetch Shock. So our life total doesn't matter too much. We hit the other Tarmogoyf, and now look at this amazing position we're in now. Okay, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Goodness. Sorry about that, y'all. Okay. So what happened is we play the Bloodbraid Elf, and it hits the other Tarmogoyf. It's really, really good. So now it makes us clear for attacking with both the Tarmogoyf and the Bloodbraid Elf, which puts them to 9 and puts lethal on board with both Tarmogoyfs and the Bloodbraid Elf. Now they goes to their turn, and what our opponent does is our opponent has a Dryad and plays it, then Summoner's Pact for another Dryad and plays that one as well. Now maybe that's the only thing our opponent could have done, but I think what our opponent maybe missed was that just put them dead on board. Before the Dryad and the Lily went to the graveyard, our Tarmogoyfs were 4/5s. So maybe they were thinking, okay, he can Edict with the Liliana, but then a Dryad will block this Tarmogoyf and then only hit for 7, I'll be at 2. But I think what our opponent maybe failed to realize is that down ticking on the Liliana puts both Planeswalker and Enchantment in the graveyard, making this just lethal even under the 1 block. So very, very fortunate here to steal game 1. And we can see here also the consequence of our decision to play the Bloodbraid Elf here. If we had, for instance, just played the Tarmogoyf ticked up with the Bloodbraid Elf, ticked up with the Liliana, and then attacked, they could have just taken it. And then they would have been in a position that, because I'm pretty sure they had the Summoner's Pact in hand, would be in a position to utilize that Sakura Tribe Scout and the Summoner's Pact to probably get a Titan here. But instead, what happens is we get to kill that Sakura Tribe Scout. Oh no, the Sakura Tribe Scout would have died to the Ren 6. So actually, it's hard to say exactly what maybe would have went down in some other scenario. Either way, I like the Bloodbraid Elf line because it puts the most pressure on the board and forces them to have to respond very quickly to lethal. All right, we're going to game 2. All right, we open up on a hand that is okay. It's not a great hand, but it's an okay hand. The reason why I like this hand, or at least want to keep it, is because we have 2 pieces of hand disruption, which is very powerful against Amulet, and we have a threat in Tarmogoyf. These Bloodbraid Elves are a little bit unfortunate. I mean, we kind of have to go running lands here to utilize them, and then even then, we might be a little slow. But I do think we're going to keep this in the power of being able to go hand disruption into Goyf. Draw Liliana, which potentially could be good. We're just going to go ahead and fetch Shock for the Overgrown Tomb. Play the Inquisition. And we see we have 2 choices here. In a vacuum here, I think you just always take the Azusa. Let's say our opponent draws an Amulet of Vigor next turn. What they can do is go ahead and play the Amulet of Vigor. And then Simic. Okay, so no, never mind. So they couldn't. Even if they draw an Amulet of Vigor next turn, they're not casting this Azusa next turn. Or the Dryad. Right? Because then they just get the 2 mana off the Simic Growth Chamber. Still, though, I think that between these 2, we just want to take the Azusa because once the Azusa hits the battlefield, it's going to have a bigger impact than the Dryad will. The Dryad is a little bit... Our removal spells are a little bit more effective against the Dryad. Oh, indeed. And speaking of, let's take a look at how we sideboarded. So, in this matchup, we're going to take out our bolts, leave our pushes. We have to leave our pushes for these guys. We realize that Lightning Bolt, not very good against the Dryad. We're going to cut the Ren and 6s. Kind of like what I was talking about in the first game. You know, Ren and 6 doesn't really do much in this matchup. Doesn't really have a big impact. Also, Scavenging Ooze here also doesn't really have much of an impact. Scavenging Ooze is better in the mirror, better in grindy matchups where the graveyards really matter. That's just not the case for Amulet Titans. We want to get rid of those. So we're going to cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards because we do have a lot to bring in. We're going to bring in the 3 pillages because land destruction is very powerful. So that's going to be 3 bolts for 3 pillages. We're going to bring in 2 Ashioks. The Ashioks are going to replace our 2 Ren and 6s as our Planeswalkers. And then we also have our Choke and Boil. When Dryad hits the battlefield, it makes all lands all different types. So if you cast a Boil with the Dryad out, it will destroy all of their lands. Similarly, if you have a Choke out and they have a Dryad out, it will keep all their lands tapped. Choke isn't great, but I still prefer the Choke over the Scavenging Ooze. That also, as I'm talking about it, is a good reason why to not take the Dryad, because the Dryad can be a significant downside if we get to resolve the Boil with the Dryad out. All right, good deal. So anyway, we get to take the Azusa. Pass the turn. So they just play Breeding Pool tapped. Pass it on to us. Definitely an argument here to just Thoughtseize out their Dryad. However, since we drew the Liliana here, since we drew the other lands, I'm pretty happy with playing this Tarmogoyf. So that next turn they're going to play the Dryad, and we get to Edict and grow the Tarmogoyf a lot with their being an enchantment in the graveyard. So they go ahead and play their Dryad. They get another land drop, and they play the Simic Growth Chamber, bouncing back the Telarius. So this is an interesting spot here. Definitely a real argument for this pillage on this Simic Growth Chamber. With their next turn, they're going to untap, and they got the Telarius back in their hand, which is going to let them transmute for a pact. However, if we think about that, if we do Edict with the Lily, transmuting costs 2 blue and a colorless. So if they spend their turn transmuting, which you have to do as a sorcery, and only 1 more land drop, they can't really cast anything else once they transmute. And we realize that we have a Thoughtseize in hand. So if they go ahead and transmute for the Pact, we can pretty easily Thoughtseize and take the Pact. So with that all in mind, grabbing the double red for our pillage, because we hopefully do want to cast this pillage down the line. We're going to Edict, kill the Dryad, and then get to rumble in for a bunch of damage. Also, let me think about it. So if the Dryad wasn't there, this would just be a 3/4. And if we pillage, that puts a sorcery in the graveyard. Yeah, so actually, if we pillage this, it does set them back quite a lot, but then the Tarmogoyf is not able to connect. This is an interesting spot. Now that the more I'm talking about this, I really do wonder what was more correct here. My thinking is the Lily to Edict, grow the Goyf, and attack, and we're not worried about their Telaria West and Summoner's Pact. But there may be a really decent argument here for the pillage on the Simic Growth Chamber, because that sets them back so far. I don't know. That's a tough one. Definitely going to run one with the Tarmogoyf, though. Ooh, they rip a really good one in Amulet. So they go ahead and transmute with Telaria West. And Wheat. Another Bloodbraid Elf. Not the best, but, you know, we got a couple options here. We can pillage this Amulet of Vigor. But if we think about it, we pillage the Amulet of Vigor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any other untapped lands lets them just pact for a Titan. And y'all know how it goes. Once the Titan hits the battlefield, the game just kind of ends. So I think we're just going to go ahead. Pitch a Bloodbraid Elf to the Liliana of the Veil. And Thoughtseize away Summoner's Pact. When they reveal their hand, doesn't have Forest, just Gruul Turf. We just have Gruul Turf. So we pass it to them. So they're top decking now. You know, if we hit a land, then we get to Bloodbraid Elf. If we don't hit a land, then we get to pillage their amulet, so we don't just die on the spot to a Titan. So they kind of need to top deck right now, or else their backs are really going to be against the wall. All right, Gruul Turf, and it doesn't look like they have much, so they're going to just pass it back to us. We draw the lands. We're going to tick up. Kind of punt fake there a little bit, but we're just going to discard the Bloodbraid Elf. And, you know, on this board, I think that pillaging the Amulet of Vigor is a very safe play. We ticked up the discarded Forest, by the way, which gives away that they just have... Well, I guess no, that's still an unknown because they bounced back the Forest last turn. So there is an unknown in their hand. We could go to pillage a bounce land, which would take them to 1, 2, 3, 4. So they would have to have something like Castle Garenbrig into Titan next turn. We pillage the Amulet of Vigor. They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they could definitely Titan next turn, but then not really be able to abuse the Amulet of Vigor there. There's a lot of safe plays to play here, but I think I really, really prioritize just putting a lot of pressure on the board. You know, playing that way maybe is incorrect because I'm trying to turn us more of an aggro deck than a control deck. But I just think that with the more draw steps you give your opponent in this matchup, the worse it becomes. Because Amulet Titan just has such dramatic, splashy top decks that just completely swing the game around, that I think that limiting their draw steps with damage is just slightly more important. Now that I'm thinking about it, though, if we hit them with 5 and put them to 6, then they're just dead with the Bloodbraid Elf on next turn, so maybe it is just more wise to pillage here. Be really interested to hear what you guys think about this one, because I do go ahead and just Bloodbraid it. But of course, you know, never punished, always lucky. We just hit the Ashiok, and so that covers a lot of their top decks here, and we just get to rumble in here, and just giving them one more top deck. And they don't hit what they need, so they scoop. All right, feeling pretty good. We're going into the last round, 4-0. See what we can get done. All right, we open up on a hand here that these are the kind of hands I just hate and Jund. Our only early disruption is not the disruption we want on the first couple of turns. Our only threat is a very mediocre 2-2 that takes a long time to grow. And our most impactful card here that we can cast is really Liliana. This is not a hand that I'm really particularly excited about. If this was already a mulligan to 6, we probably just keep and bottom the Croak so that we can't cast here. But I do go ahead and decide to throw it away. And we open up a hand that's just really heavy on disruption. So with a hand like this is just not a hand I think you can throw back. Just because of the power of turn 1 Thoughtseize and the potential of Lightning Bolt and Fatal Push to do a lot here. So we just got to hope that it's a creature matchup where it really matters. Bottom Basic Forest, because Basic Forest is the worst land in our deck. And then we go ahead. We're just going to go ahead and lead on Swamp Thoughtseize. Swamp Thoughtseize is pretty bad if we top deck a Ren at 6. But otherwise, it's just the safest thing to do to help preserve life total and play around a lot of the Blood Moon effects that are in the format. All right, we go to Thoughtseize, and we see a pretty Thoughtseize-proof hand, really. Postmortem Lunge, if you're not familiar, basically brings back a creature for 1 turn. So what the idea is that if we Thoughtseize a Devoted Druid, if they Postmortem Lunge it, it brings it back from the graveyard. And also Postmortem Lunge gives it haste so that it can tap immediately. So what this game plan kind of is with this deck is they are basically looking to either have a Devoted Druid up in the graveyard, whether through the opponent's disruption or other means, and then be able to Postmortem Lunge it back and already have the Devoted Druid, the Vizier of Remedies, so that they can make infinite mana here. This is a really tough call here because it feels like taking either Devoted Druid or Postmortem Lunge really doesn't do much, right? Like they want their Devoted Druids in the graveyard for the Postmortem Lunge. We could play to try to maybe hope to top deck another hand disruption, so to take the other Postmortem Lunge, but I think we're just going to take the least redundant part of their hand in the Ranger Captain. You know, if they hit 3 lands, they get to Postmortem Lunge back a Ranger Captain and get a piece that they need, which does kind of suck, but that was a tough call in my opinion. So we're just going to pass it to them. They're just going to play a tapped Overgrown Tomb, and we're going to take it back to us. And we can pretty easily play the Raging Ravine tapped and hold up Fatal Push. Thicket into Devoted Druid. We're just going to go ahead and push it. Use our mana. And we get to rip a Liliana, which is very, very good. Because now we get to pressure their hand and incentivize them to try to make these Postmortem Lunges as least scary or least impactful as possible. They're going to play their other Devoted Druid. We draw a land, so we just get to go tap lands, bolt the Druid, tick up, pressure their hand more. So now this is really, really where Liliana shines, because we're just putting them in such a squeeze here. They're down to just 1 Postmortem Lunge in hand. They have 3 lands, so they can Postmortem Lunge for a Ranger Captain, but the Ranger Captain's going to go away, and then their hand just continues to get attacked by the Lily. So they decide instead to play out their Noble Hierarch. They're probably trying to incentivize us not to get this towards Ultimate by playing out the Hierarch there. Let's see what we draw. And, you know, only perfect draws here. You know, they do say it's better to be lucky than to be good. So we go ahead and just get the Ren and 6, kill the Hierarch, tick up with the Lily. Now we're threatening an Ultimate, which on this board is ineffective, but down the line, it'll just be something looming over them. So they get to do that. They get to Eladamri's Call for a Shalai. Basically what they're doing is they're saying basically this: look, we are in a horrible position. My opponent's like, I'm going to play to try to top deck a land. If I top deck a land, I get to go land Shalai. Shalai gives them hexproof. So actually that would shut off Liliana's both down tick for the edict and down tick for the first the sacrifice and then the ultimate here at the bottom. Edict and then the ultimate. To separate all their permanents into 2 piles. So I like my opponent's line here of just Eladamri's Call for Shalai. Shalai is very hard for us to deal with. We have to like top deck like exactly like Bolt. So we go Bolt Ren and 6 or, you know, Fatal Push and then also draw a land to go Revolt. You know, so Shalai is a really good card in this matchup. So I really appreciate my opponent's line here of just going for it. Say, hey, I have to top deck a land here so I can cast a Shalai. Let's see if they do. And they don't, so they have to concede. Going on to game 2. So we're pretty hyped here. going into the last round. We're up a game. Let's see how we sideboarded. We're going to go ahead and shave a Lily here. In the past, I don't think I would have ever done this, but actually, a gentleman by the name of Michael Farrell, he is one of the first players to ever get really good results with Croxajund. He won a SCG Classic with Croxajund, and in his tournament report, he talked about shaving lilies against the Devoted Druid deck. And I can see where that's coming from, especially on the draw. They tend to flood the board with lots of creatures. And so our down tick with the Lily can be, not that effective, especially if we're on the draw. So for this, we are going to shave a Lily. We're also going to cut our Croxas, because especially when they have cards like Postmortem Lunge in their deck, the Croxa is not quite as good. And I think we want to turn our deck into as much disruption and removal as possible. So we shaved our Lily. We shaved an Assassin's Trophy. It's our worst removal spell in the matchup because it ramps them. And this is a deck that tends to really use its mana quite a lot. They have search effects. They have things that, I'm sure they play Finale of Devastation, where it's green, X and search out a creature. So they really, really benefit from us ramping them. So I cut one of those. As I'm looking here, I really should have brought in the Anger of the Gods and the Huntmaster of the Fells. That seems like just a complete mistake here and just an oversight. I think at this point, it was the end of the league. It was pretty late, and I think I was just so nervous, honestly, about trying to get the 5-0, which I'd been trying to play for so long, that I think I just spam clicked and just completely overlooked that Huntmaster and Anger are very good in this matchup. So we took out 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, and we brought in the 2 Collective Brutalities. Those are very good in this matchup. Most of their creatures die to Collective Brutality, and they play a lot of very impactful instants and sorceries that we can snipe out of their hand. And then we also brought in the 2 Plague Engineers, because Plague Engineer is just an insane card that, completely devastates decks like our opponents. So let's go ahead and see what we open up on. And we open up on, it's just the perfect hand. I mean, look at this hand. This hand is a goddamn work of art. How could you ask for a better hand than this? Maybe you could whine and want a threat, but oh dear God, like look at this hand. This hand is ridiculous. Love to see it. So anyway, our opponent goes to Windswept Heath Pass. This sucks because this is just such an obvious Veil of Summer. But here's what I'm thinking. Veil of Summer sucks, but we have the most nutted hand ever. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get that stupid Veil of Summer out of my opponent's hand. We just got to take our medicine, get it out of their hands, because you know what? We can just absolutely mow down anything else they play. We have so much more disruption. So we'll let them waste their first turn. But guess what happens? They don't have the Veil of Summer. Thank goodness. All right, we open up on a 2-lander here. And also another, actually, kind of a challenging take here. But let's break this down. So this is a hand here that wins on turn 3 if you have no disruption. Unfortunately for my opponent, our Jund is basically just disruption.deck, so that's not really going to happen. We have here Vizier of Remedies and Devoted Druid. Both of these are shut down in a variety of ways. If they just lead on Devoted Druid next turn, we can snipe it with the Collective Brutality. If our opponent draws another 2-drop they'd rather play instead, then down the line we can play the Plague Engineer and name Human. And with that will prevent them from being able to go make infinite mana, with Devoted Druid, because Vizier of Remedies will die to the Plague Engineer, and that therefore will make it so the Devoted Druid cannot, infinitely put -1/-1 counters on itself to continue tapping for mana. So I'm feeling very confident that we have their main creature engine shut down. So I'm looking more towards these value pieces here. I'm thinking about Eternal Witness, which is we'll be able to buy back whatever we discard, so that seems really appealing. Finale of Devastation isn't that great here, as you can see if they're just stuck on the 2 lands. We know we're going to be able to kill this Devoted Druid with this Collective Brutality here, so we're not too worried with them untapping and being able to really effectively utilize this. Eladamri's Call here can just grab whatever creature they want, so I think that one's tempting as well. I really think here this is a situation where you could probably make an argument for taking just about every card except for the Vizier here. I go ahead and take the Devoted Druid. I think that goes against everything I was just saying, so maybe I shouldn't have taken the Devoted Druid. I think what I wanted to do there was to prevent some disaster scenario from happening. I don't know. Opponent just plays land go, and just rips just running Veil of Summers, and then we are not ever really able to disrupt their main combo. Something like that, I'm not sure. Anyway, we pass it back to them. Go Horizon Canopy, play Birds. So they have 4 cards in hand. We know what every single one of them are. We have 2 options here, Collective Brutality or Ren 6. Both are very defensible in my opinion, but I think that Collective Brutality here gives us an opportunity to snipe one of these really impactful instants or sorceries out of their hands. We're not going to mess with the Finale because there just doesn't look like they're going to be hitting the mana they need anytime soon. So we're going to go ahead and take the Eladamri's Call. So we know that they have Vizier, Finale, Ewit. If they go land Ewit, then we just get to snipe it with the Ren and 6, or really just Plague Engineer Name Human, and then they just have a bunch of cards gunked up in their hands. All right, they missed their land drop. That sends it back our way. We just draw another incredible card. I'm gonna use this opportunity to resolve a Ren and 6 so that we can have plenty of lands in hand to ditch to the Liliana. We also get to do a nice little Ren and 6 into Thoughtseize here. They get to respond by Abrupt Decaying or Ren and 6. This is like so fine for us. We already got the value out of the card. Yeah, this is great. The Abrupt Decay is not hitting our Plague Engineer, which is just going to be devastating. All right, we take the now we take the Ewit, which I think may have been the take originally, but at least we got there eventually. We got to take the Ewit there. Gets to buy back whatever. And now these cards just do absolutely nothing. I mean, Finale Devastation does little or nothing unless they have. This can grab the land creature, or a Dryad Arbor. Let's see. Yeah, it can grab Dryad Arbor, but we don't really care about that. Pass it to them. Ooh, they find a Devoted Druid, so now they've got the combo. They're forcing us to have it here, forcing us to to deal with this, because now they get to go. If they untap and we have no disruption, they just go Vizier Remedies, make infinite mana, Finale of Devastation for 100 million, and then kill us. So this really, that top deck right there really speaks to the power of this Devoted Druid combo deck. I mean, look, we got Thoughtseize, Ren and 6, Collective Brutality, Inquisition, and they still are threatening to win here. But luckily for us, we just hit that Liliana. Maybe you want to be really, really risky and play this Bloodbraid Elf to try to hit disruption, but there's absolutely no need to do that. Again, okay, maybe you want to play Plague Engineer Name Human, but what if they top deck Path to Exile, right? Then they Path or Plague Engineer, make enough mana. Well, I guess they couldn't, though, because they would use the white here, and then they couldn't cast Vizier. Still, let's not mess around. Let's just get this thing killed with our Liliana. All right, play land, pass. All right, they're finally going to play out that Vizier, which means that their draw step probably was not very strong. Oh, it's the Misty Rainforest, sure. Just have a Finale in hand. Grab our land. We got a Bolt. First thing we do, play Plague Engineer Name Human. This kills this and many other creatures that would potentially come online. Tick up Lily, discard the Bolt. We don't need it anymore. And then pass the turn. When it passes to us, get to Bloodbraid, into Inquisition. Getting a little bit sloppy here. Should have ticked up first to nab this out of their hand, because they wouldn't draw off of it. We just pitch our scoos, but I was getting a little too excited here at the very end here of my 5-0. So potentially open a window for them to win, but we get to tick up and they just pitch an Eladamri's Call. They could have cast it, but it wouldn't have mattered, right? Because they would have gone a creature and I had to pitch that anyway. All right, we get to slam in, take a draw step, and they concede, and that was it. All right, you guys, if you're still here with me, thank you so much for hanging out. I really enjoyed doing that. I noticed a lot of mistakes I didn't realize when I played this league last night. So this was really, really helpful. thank all of you guys for your feedback and your support and your help. It's made this quarantine a lot more bearable. All right, y'all. I'll see you guys later in the Discord. Thank you.